Hello, Happy Valley. Today's video is going to be on our second element of art and our third, shape and form. Now, I put these together because they are like brother and sister. Shape is two-dimensional, while form is three-dimensional. The element of art, shape, and form. I combine shape and form because they are so similar. I call them brother and sister. So shape is talking about something that's flat, that's two-dimensional. It only has height, it has width. On the opposite, we have form, which is three-dimensional or appears to be three-dimensional. So it has depth in addition to height and width, or it has the illusion of depth, meaning we make it look three-dimensional on a flat surface. Now from this point, we're going to go just to shape, and we're going to focus on shape, and then we'll bring form back into it towards the end. So shapes can be overt, meaning straightforward. If you look at the image on the screen, you see that that is a triangle. It's an outline that is a triangle, meaning straightforward. Then you have something that's more subtle, it's more indirect. So you have a bunch of little circles making up the shape. So there isn't a descriptive line. Remember that from line? Overt is a descriptive line. It's an outline. A subtle shape is more indirect. It's the space inside creating that shape. And there are two categories that describe shape. We have geometric and we have organic. So geometric shapes, these are mathematically named shapes. Squares, rectangles, circles, stars. These are things that we can see, that we can point at, that we have a name for. These are often man-made. It is very rare to find a geometric shape in nature. You might find one that looks pretty close to it, but it's not going to be perfectly geometric, mathematically geometric. Then you have more organic shapes. These are free-flowing, they are irregular, they are asymmetrical, meaning they don't match on both sides. There isn't really a name for them. These are things that you're going to find out in nature. So I have my example on there is a petal, a leaf. These are things that they might look like they all look the same, but if you were to pluck two petals and put them next to each other, there are going to be some differences in the two. No two are alike. These are things found often in nature. So let's go back to the geometric shapes. There's the big three. And our first one is a circle. And circles, they have no endpoint. So we use them as an expression of a complete rotation. Think about like a clock, or a sense of completion. If you finish the circle, it is complete. Or things of eternal. Think of like a clock, or on my iWatch, I have that activity circle. So as it completes itself, then it makes another rotation around, or the circle of life. Have you ever heard that term from The Lion King? Our second geometric shape is the triangle. And this is something that we use to suggest directional movement. Think of like the arrow keys on your computer. Or it also can signify the apex, the peak, like a mountain peak. And we even use them as a hierarchy. So, based on lowest necessity to most important would be at the very peak, at the very top. And lastly, the rectangle. And this one is the one that is everywhere in human design. When you see a rectangle, it's usually signifying a human design. Think of it. It is everywhere in your life. Your cell phone is a rectangle. Your computer screen, your windows, your doors, everything. Your walls, these are square or rectangle. A square is just a version of a rectangle. Now you can modify these shapes. And modifying meaning that we're changing the way that they look. So for instance, when we talk about when we round corners, if we're rounding a shape, so we have the square there, but then on to the right of it, we have rounded those edges, and it can feel safer. It's a more inviting shape, and that's why really we have so many icons, so many apps, so many buttons that are rounded. Look at your keys on your keyboard right now. Those aren't sharp edges. Generally, we think of a sharp edge as dangerous. So a rounded edge is more inviting. Now you can change the skew of an object, or I'm sorry, of a shape. So a skew, when we rotate it just a little bit, or not rotate, but stretch it. So skewing means like stretching it. And it gives us a sense of three-dimensional perspective or speed. It looks like that square is taking off. It's going somewhere. And then rotating. And rotating can often change its original meaning entirely. And if you rotate something, it can look a little bit like a different shape in its entirety. Shapes can be positive or negative. When you hear the word positive shape, we're talking about something that's in front. It's in the foreground. So a positive shape appears to be on top of the background. And I want you to know the difference between these two, especially for the test. Negative is talking about the background, the part that's behind whatever's in front. So here we have a tree. The tree is the positive. The background is becoming the negative, or what's underneath, the surrounding area around it. And there's so many things that you can do with positive and negative shape. Let's look at this image right here. What do you see? Do you see a vase? Maybe you see two faces. Maybe you see both. The answer really is both. But let's try inverting it. So when we invert, we're able to see, maybe now you can see the faces versus the vase. This is a way of showing it's hard to see the difference between positive and negative shape. And there's so many fun things that you can do with this, illusions that you can do with this. For instance, have you ever seen this picture of the old woman or young woman? So some of you might see this as an old woman, and that's how I first see it. If you don't see the old woman, look here. This could be the nose of the old woman. You have the eye. This is her mouth. Here is her white hair. She has this black shawl on. Maybe she has a feather coming out. Now, if you only see the young woman, if you only see the old woman, you can't see the young woman. So look here instead. So now the young woman, her face is turned. And this part right over here, this is her nose. And there's her eyelash. This is her cheek or her jawbone. This is a necklace. She has black hair. And then she has some sort of white veil over top. So this is a little joke I have. Can I see your ID? Wait, never mind. Wait, yeah, I need to see your ID. Wait, because you can't tell between if she's an older woman or a younger woman. Again, playing with positive and negative shape. And I love to show artists that work with this element. So here we have two pictures relating to Snow White. You'll be able to see the huntsman right here in her hair. So this base is the huntsman. You have his hat, brings out his nose, then he has his pipe. But then it's hard to tell which one is the positive, which is the negative. Again, over here with the other Snow White, we have an apple core. What we also have where it's been eaten out, you're able to see faces, and we have Snow White. I'm assuming that this would be Prince Charming. And then we have a little heart in the middle of that apple core. Again, which one is the foreground? Which one is the background? For me, the apple is the foreground, what's in front, and it's where it's been eaten out or chopped away, we have the background resting behind. Some other fun examples of messing with positive and negative shape. Little Red Riding Hood. I'll just mention this one. So if you see this as most of you will see this as an eyeball, as the wolf. It's pretty dominating in this, but it's also two-ply, and that this is a moon, and this is a dark forest that she's getting ready to venture through. Another one, Batman and Penguin. So you have Penguin here in the yellow, and then behind that you have Batman. So tell me, in your own opinion, which one you think is positive and which one you think is negative. And there is no right or wrong answer with some of these, because this one, to me, I feel like Penguin is in the front, is in the foreground. He's the positive shape, and Batman is the background. It could also be the choice of color that makes me see it that way. But some people will see Batman as in the front and Penguin as in the background. This is American Werewolf in London. So this black shape in here, this is actually the shape of the United Kingdom. And London is the capital of Great Britain. So it's kind of primarily right about here. But you can see the werewolf in the background. So which one's the foreground, which one's the background? It's all about perception. Same thing here. We're playing with this positive and negative shape. And the background or the sky ends up making the shape of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I found this one pretty cool. Here's a great example of positive and negative shape. Which set of legs are in the foreground, which are in the background? Sometimes we have this fine line between positive and negative, and it's all based on your individual perception. And this image really is good for positive and negative shape, but I should put this with line, because here we're able to finish off these numbers and see them for what they are, even though a lot of it is implied. We have closures in here, and this would have been fantastic to use with line. Now this next image is really going to mess with you. So is he looking straight at us, or is he looking to the side? If you said he's looking straight at us, you're correct. What the artist has done is they've come in and they have built this so that it looks like he's looking from the side of his face, but really he's facing you forward. So this is half of his nose, and they've just managed to Photoshop this part out. This is literally half of his face. Half of his mouth is here. The other half would have been over here on this side. And what really kind of gives it away is his shirt. You can see where it comes to a point up here. So this would be where the strap would have been. Here's a second one. This one's easier to tell because he's wearing a collared shirt. But if he wasn't wearing a collared shirt, it would be kind of hard, just like the first one. They've also taken part of an eyelash here to really mess with you and play with the image. So Gustav Klimt was an artist that used shapes. He used repeated flat shapes to create patterns, to create textures. And repeating shapes over and over and over again is creating a texture. It's a visual texture. Now, he didn't paint things as they look like in real life. Instead, he left a lot of flatness, a lot of two-dimensional work to his paintings, like a pancake. Now, that's talking about the clothing, but when you look at the hands or faces of the people that he painted, they're more realistic looking. They're more three-dimensional. They are more of a form, or the appearance of a form, whereas the clothing is more of a flat surface, two-dimensional surface. And here is a famous painting. You've maybe seen this before. He used a lot of gold, but if you look in the clothing that they're wearing, the female, she's wearing things that are more curvilinear, lots of circles repeated, and the male's garment is made out of things of squares and rectangles and more linear shapes, something that's flat and or made with lines. Curvilinear, there's curved lines in here. Linear meaning flat. So again, if you look though at the features of the body parts, those things are more realistic looking, and then you have the flatness of the garments. But he's used these shapes repeatedly to create these textures, even in the ground down in here. Here's some other paintings that he's done. Again, very flat, two-dimensional looking outfits. But then when he gets up to faces and hands, they are more realistic looking. Still not realistic, but more realistic looking. All right, so NOTAN. And this is a term used by the Japanese to express dark and light. It is an element of design that they have in their art guidelines. And it's very similar to our positive and negative. So it's focused on the interaction between positive and negative shape. And they're very similar in relationship, yet they have their own, they relate in harmony. There isn't one that's over dominating the other. And that's where we get the yin and the yang. This is a symbol of dark and light. Opposites that complement, they do not conflict. So a NOTAN recognizes that they are both equally separate, but they are both important. And we will be doing a NOTAN later on as an assignment. M.C. Escher, ever heard of this guy? Maybe you've seen his stuff in math books. He was a mathematician, but he was also an artist. And he created or incorporated a lot of geometry into his artworks, into his illustrations. He was also a tapestry artist. He created postage stamps. He did all kinds of stuff. Maybe you've seen any of his work. You've probably seen this one right here. And he's known for his mathematical prints and his optical illusions. Some more of his stuff. Everything fits within itself. He had the impossible construction. If you notice, on the black and white print, he uses negative space and positive space. There's a fine line between the two. His Morphing Reptiles. And if you look at that picture on the flat surface there, look at the reptile coming out down here by this plant. So part of it is nice and flat, and then we build that form. We have form here. Of course, half the legs are still remaining flat. And there's this evolution of the reptiles as it works its way around. Works its way, and it melts back into that flat surface. And what he did was create tessellations. Tessellations are designs that fill an entire space or entire page or composition. There's no gaps. There's no overlapping. And it creates a simple form or pattern. I'm sorry, not form, but pattern that completely fills the space. It's like a puzzle, but all the pieces look exactly the same and they fit within themselves. Now, this is based on a hexagon shape. We will be creating our own tessellations. Bars will be based on a square. Hexagon is a little bit more challenging. So a tessellation, and that's what M.C. Escher worked with, comes from the word tessera, which is from ancient Rome or Latin, and it just means small cubes. So tessera were used by the Romans to create mosaics for their floors, for their walls. They use these little tiles, and they're obviously the same shape, but they fit over and over and over again and create a broader picture. And here's a picture of a tessellation, or I'm sorry, of a tessella. I've zoomed in so that you can see all the little bits and pieces of that. So let's go back to form. And when we talk about form, there's two types. There's implied form, which suggests something that's three-dimensional on a flat surface. So this picture right here, this is a painting. And it looks very realistic. It looks almost like it's a photograph, but it's a painting. So this artist has used other elements to create this and make it look three-dimensional, make it look as realistic as she possibly could. So this is implied form, meaning we're working on a flat surface, but we're trying to make it look three-dimensional. And then you have actual form. This is something that is three-dimensional. You can see from all angles. You can walk around it. This is like a sculpture. So an actual form would be a sculpture, or even a building that would be an actual form. Something three-dimensional that can be seen from all sides. So there's this really cool type of art called trompe-l'oeil, and it means trick of the eye. So all of this that you see here, especially back here in the background, this is just a plain old wall. Somebody has painted that on there. There really is not a statue there. If you were to put your hand there, it would be flat, very, very flat. There's no depth in there at all. And I used to think that this was also, you know, very flat, because if you look here, you can see over on this part. I used to think this was like a Wile E. Coyote thing where you would run into it and just hit a wall. But the more I look at this, I do believe that this is realistic. It's just up on this flat surface and back here that are not. I love showing you this one. So this is Patrick Kamency. And here is it when it first started, and then this is what he's done afterwards. So he's created all of this stuff, and it's easier for you guys to really see this on here. This is a trompe-l'oeil. This is a trick of the eye. It's meant to look realistic. None of this stuff exists. And you see here, he even added this little, you know, cylinder type tower. Not here at all. Another one. This one's even better. Look at this. He's added these windows. He's added a balcony. He's added its own patterning for the roof. None of that existed here until he did that. He even added a little shop down in here. Yet another one by him, and this is the original down here in the right-hand corner. Fantastic stuff. And this is Frederick Hundertwasser, and he was an artist that worked with shape, but he also even worked with form. So I'll show you a little bit of his shape. Known for working with shapes, had a lot of bright colors in his art pieces, things that are considered more juvenile looking. But he also created buildings, or the facades of buildings. He wanted art to be attractive and fun at the same time. He said he didn't want a lot of people to be unhappy or depressed when they looked at his stuff. He said that they were already burdened with problems. He didn't want to give them more. He wanted to make things look fun and exciting. Here's some really crazy looking artwork. This is Ron Mueck, and he does hyper realistic art pieces. So he creates or recreates the human figure and puts them in these weird positions. Sometimes they're even kind of grotesque looking. Not the most pretty baby. This is artist FELIX SEMPER, and he creates beautiful sculptures from paper. You can see here, this is one of Biggie Smalls that he did, and it looks as a solid piece, but if you were to pick up the head of it, or even, you know, any part of this, you'll see that we have an accordion style paper. Don't ask me how he creates these. I have no idea if he sits there and creates those accordion folds. I've never really looked into his artworks, but there will be some videos posted of his really neat stuff. You can check him out on YouTube. Here's the classic Lay's potato chips, and you can see I took a screenshot of it moving. He's made a Coca-Cola can. I mean, he's done all kinds of stuff. You can check out his stuff. He's got an Instagram. I'll post all this stuff down so you can go and check through his artworks. All right, so that should be it for shape and form.